You ever seen anything like this before?
No. And it's still changing. It's figuring us out faster than we're figuring it out.
It doesn't have anything else to do. So we have a novel virus with a mortality rate in the low 20s, no treatment protocol, and no vaccine at this time.
That is correct.
From here on out, I want no one working on this except the PSL-4. Last thing we need is for this thing to walk out of the lab on the bottom of someone's ship.
Hello, world of the great interwebs, and welcome to another episode of Unabashedly Uneducated Moronic Ramblings, where I ramble moronically on a topic of which I am unabashedly uneducated. Epidemiology, for example. Fun fact, I wrote and recorded this review and was in the middle of the editing process when I realized I missed the point of this movie. So I started over. This is Contagion Review Version 2. The 2011 movie Contagion was directed by Steven Soderbergh and follows multiple, mostly interweaving storylines throughout the outbreak of a novel virus pandemic. Unlike the COVID-19 virus that we're currently dealing with, Contagion's virus has a mortality rate of nearly 30% and kills in as little as 48 hours. This thing is scary, and that is the point of this movie: fear. The virus is merely the MacGuffin that Contagion uses to make its larger point regarding fear. I'll expand on that idea shortly. While the basic premise of Contagion is the same as the 1995 movie Outbreak, which I reviewed a couple weeks back, the details and the presentation are very different. Outbreak is more of a suspense thriller with a few action sequences and a very linear storyline. Contagion, on the other hand, is a slow-burn suspense movie, more in the vein of a whodunit mystery with multiple subplots and a non-linear story told through flashbacks and time jumps. IMDb lists it as an action movie, but I have no idea why. There's zero action in this movie. Let me start by saying I enjoyed watching Contagion, and I enjoyed it more the second time around. That said, I don't see it as something I would purposely put on again, even just as background noise. It spreads itself too thin, trying to include too many subplots while neglecting character development across the board. This makes it difficult to get too worked up when a character dies, expectedly or otherwise. If there's a focus character, and you could argue this point, I would say it's Dr. Ellis Cheever, played by Lawrence Fishburne. He's a higher-up at the CDC, and both the team lead for those attempting to combat the virus and the public face of the CDC. Around Dr. Cheever, we have Dr. Erin Mears, played by Kate Winslet. Dr. Mears is sent to Chicago to see if she can track how the virus got into the U.S. and possibly find a way to contain it. Also, we have Dr. Ali Hextall, played by Jennifer Eel. Dr. Hextall heads up the team attempting to find a vaccination for the virus. There are two other main players that are not part of the CDC, but that are important to Dr. Ellis' story arc. The first is Rear Admiral Lyle Haggerty, played by Bryan Cranston. It's not a particularly memorable part, however his character provides a connection between the CDC and the federal government at large. The second is Dr. Ian Sussman, played by Elliot Gould. Dr. Sussman, a research scientist at the University of California, is the unsung hero of the movie, as it is his science that puts the CDC on the right track to finding the aforementioned vaccination. While Dr. Ellis and his team give us the science and statistical side of the story, the emotional connection is, if not provided, at least attempted, by Matt Damon playing Mitch Imhoff. Within the first 10 minutes of the movie, and it's also in every trailer, so not really a spoiler here, Mitch's wife, Beth Imhoff, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, dies from the virus. Mitch's story is certainly a sad one, but it's not particularly moving, probably because of the large gaps between his scenes. However, it's through his eyes and those of his daughter Jory, played by Anna Jacoby Herron, that we get to see the panic, fear, and subsequent irrationality on display by the general public, which is ultimately the result of misinformation spread via the internet. A third and wholly unconnected story arc is that of Dr. Leonora Orantes, played by Marion Cotillard. Dr. Orantes is an epidemiologist with the World Health Organization. Her job is to track down the source of the virus, to find patient zero and figure out how they got it in the first place. Everything she does is done in Hong Kong, while everything else is in the U.S., and through her eyes we get a very slapdash, slightly confusing breakdown of how Beth Imhoff ended up with the virus before she died. The last and most interesting character is Alan Crumwitty, played by Jude Law. Crumwitty is an internet blogger who has a less than glowing opinion of the CDC specifically and government in general. It's this character that really drives the movie. However, this was not immediately clear to me. This was the epiphany I had that made me rewrite this review. I'm going to get a little spoilery here for a sec, so if that's an issue for you...
Earmuffs.
But throughout the movie, Crumwitty is portrayed as a bit of a conspiracist. going so far as to accuse Dr. Ellis of not working on a cure because there's no money in it for the CDC. However, he's also initially portrayed as the benevolent hero, who is the only one willing to seek the truth. What we don't find out until later, and on a second viewing you can literally see the moment where Crumwitty decides to sell his soul for a handful of cash, is that Alan Crumwitty is a self-absorbed narcissist who cares for nothing so much as Alan Crumwitty. And by the end of the movie, I just wanted to see him swinging from the gallows. It's this character that is the true crux around which the entire movie is built. Notice that the tagline for Contagion is, "Nothing spreads like fear." At one point in the movie, Dr. Ellis says,
What we do know is that in order to become sick, you have to first come in contact with a sick person or something that they touched. In order to get scared, all you have to do is come in contact with a rumor or the television or the internet. I think what Mr. Crumwitty is spreading is far more dangerous than the disease.
Crumwitty spends most of the movie posting nonsense on his website, which serves as fuel for the mass hysteria that we see through the characters of Mitch and Jory. And by the end of the movie, we find out that the one thing that he had that seemed to give him credibility ended up being a complete fabrication. Ultimately, Dr. Ellis was right. What Crumwitty was spreading ended up being far more dangerous than the virus. This is pretty interesting considering what we're experiencing today with COVID-19. Pretty much all mainstream news outlets are playing the role of Crumwitty, pumping up the fear as much as they can while sweeping the statistics and the real numbers that would give people hope and optimism under the rug. The irony is that it's the modern-day investigative internet bloggers and smaller web-based news outlets that are doing the job that the mainstream media can't seem to do. But I digress. A little. Anyway, a lot of stuff happens in this movie, and there's a lot of exposition, mainly via Dr. Ellis and his crew, and Dr. Arantes. Contagion feels very disjointed, both at the beginning of the movie and again at the end, though it does seem to tighten up in the middle. It's also pretty odd that there is no closure to either Crumwitty or Dr. Arantes' story arcs. We're just left to guess as to what happens to them, even though the last time we see either, it's just after something pretty life-changing happens. A second viewing is almost necessary, but beyond that, I just don't see Contagion having much in the way of rewatchability. I think I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 stars. It's worth watching twice, but I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, and I don't see myself sitting through it again. But hey, that's just my opinion. Thanks for sitting through my rambling, and I'll see y'all again soon.